In this video, I'm going to show you how to impute and analyze group data in SPSS. So we have this group data, employment status at the column, unemployed, retired, or employed. And then we also have at the row, gender, which could be male or female. So this also a technique where we could employ cross tabulation because you have rows and columns. But we are particular about imputing this categorical data in SPSS. And of course, we will have two variables, gender and also employment status. So what we need to do is to first of all work this out before we can impute it in SPSS. If you could impute directly, no issues at all, that's also fine. But it's advisable to do this first so that you understand exactly what you're doing. Now, for the gender, we have male or female. Male or female. So male takes the first row. And you could see that this first row corresponds to how many values? 1, 2, 3 values entered at the first row, which is affecting unemployed, retired, employed. So in this case, we will have 1 representing male, 1 again, 1. So we have this because it's in row 1. So which means we have row 1 here under row 1, because male represents row 1. So all these values are in row 1. All these values are in row 1. Then we'll move on to the next. Female here is in row 2. Therefore, female would take 2, 2, 2. So that is sorted. We now have 1 for male and 2 for female in the case of the gender. Then we'll move to the next, employment status. You could see that the employment status here have how many columns? 3 columns. Unemployed, retired, and employed. So in this case, we will have values 1, 2, 3. And again, 1, 2, 3. If you enter this, you have 1, 2, 3. And then again, you have 1, 2, 3. Then next, the frequency. So the frequency here include from this first value to the last value. So we've got 41, 385, 477, 80, 290, and 499. Now, if you look at this clearly, you could see that where you have 1 for the male, and then you have corresponding 1 here for this unemployed is 41. Where you have 1 for the male, and then 2 for, that is the second column for the employment status, while it is the first column for the gender. You have 385, which is correct, 1 and 2. Then where you still have the same first row for the male in under the gender variable, and then unemployed, which is the third column for the employment status. You now have 1 and 3, which is 477, and so until the last one, 2 and 3, which is 499. So you could see that this information is now accurate. You could highlight, and then we format it if you want. You move down to format cells, go to border, outline, inside, and at the bottom say OK. So we've highlighted. Now we're happy to impute this into SPSS. So to do this, we'll bring our SPSS software. Now, at the bottom, we have the data view and the variable view. So go to the data view aspect and enter the information you want. So in this case, we have the 1, 1, 1, then 2, 2, 2. Then again, we'll move to the next. For the next, we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Then the next column, first column, second column, third columns, we have 41. You could always refer to your data set just to be sure of what you're doing. Like you could see clearly here, we've got this 41, 385, 477. 385, 477. The next is 80, 290, and 499. All right, so we have this, but you could see that we do not know what each of these variables represent. SPSS is confused also, but most importantly, even if we know or we have an idea, we need to tell SPSS what they actually represent so that SPSS will know exactly what to do in this situation. So you move to the variable view screen, and then you tell SPSS that this is gender. The next is employment status. Then the next variable again is the frequency. So they are all numeric. That's fine. They are all numeric. And then again, you move down, you see decimals. If you're not happy with the decimal, you get it off completely so that you reduce it to 0. And then decimal will disappear. So if you view this, you will see that the decimals have disappeared. There is no decimal. 111, 222 for the first column, which is gender. Then the second column, employment status, 123, 123. And then for the frequency, 41, 385, 477, 80, 290, 499. Then the next thing we need to do, we move to the labels. Of course, this is the same as gender. Then this is employment status. In other words, we could just say status. We just put it in the shortcut. Then this is the frequency. That is the number of times the items or each items appear in the group. Now, we're also looking at the measure value before we come back to these values. In terms of measure, the gender is nominal. But in this case, the measure is showing unknown because we enter the data manually. Assuming we save it somewhere and then we import it into SPSS, then SPSS will automatically understand to a very high extent what the values actually represent. But in this case, SPSS is unable to classify the variable, whether it is scale, nominal, or ordinal, because we are entering the data set manually. So what do we do now? We click on this unknown, and on this here, on the unknown. Under the measure icon, you see the unknown. Then from this drop-down menu, you go to nominal. Same again for the unknown. In the second instance, employment status. Employment status, we are considering unemployed, retired, employed. Yes, we also have nominal. And then for the frequency, it is scale because it's numeric. In this case, numerical, not categorical. All right, we can now go again. Of course, you look at missing, there is no missing value, so you don't need to worry about that. Then go to this value, this is very important. So under this value, we click on this gender. one represent gender. Sorry, rather, one represent male. We could say male for one. And then two represent female. We could also use M and F. So for the gender, one represent male and two represent female. We are done with this, so we could say, okay. Then you move to the next, employment status. One is unemployed. We add, two is retired. And then three is employed. And then we say, okay, you can always double check from your data set just to be sure. Of course, you could see we have male and female, unemployed, retired, employed. So that's fine. All right, now we could return to the data view screen. You could see here, there is nothing to worry about the frequency because it's numeric. We can only impute the values when it is categorical variable. All right, so we're happy with this. You could also, from this very variable view screen, do the analysis. There is no issue at all. All information is saved. No information is lost in this case. So if we move down to data view, for instance, you could see we have everything we want. Now, it might not show you clearly here, but it has already understood what has been done. So we don't need to worry. All these icons are useful for different purposes, but let's not bother about this for now. So we want to go ahead to do the analysis. Also understand that it depends on the PC you are using. There are some PCs that might not support other icons that are need to be beneath here, but also we could go and bring them over and over if for one that's not an issue. So let's proceed to do the analysis. At this point, we want to do our analysis. All right. Now, what kind of analysis can we do? There are a lot of analysis that can be done here. Let's have a staked bar chart for this. If we need a staked bar chart, because you could see here, we have gender, employment, frequency. Before you could do anything else, the first task is for you to let SPSS understand that both gender and employment status are weighted by the frequency. If you do not let SPSS know that gender and employment status are weighted by frequency, SPSS will get confused and could give you a crazy result. So you need to go to data at the top icon. And then you move down to the last item in the drop-down menu at the bottom. Click on this weight cases. We want to weigh the cases by frequency. In this case, it said do not weigh cases. No, we want to weigh it. So you move down to weigh cases. And we want to weigh the cases by frequency. Okay, now SPSS understand that the frequency here represent the frequencies for these gender, employment status. That is the values you have here. For this 1, 1, the frequency is 41. 1 and 2 frequency is 385, and so on. So if you proceed to do further statistical analysis, SPSS will understand exactly what you are doing. So we go to graph, for instance, if we need to obtain is a clustered bar chart. Let's obtain a clustered bar chart. Go to legacy dialog from the drop-down menu, and then we go to bar, the very first item. Then cluster, define. It's coming up. Now we have the option of number of cases. We also have the option of percentage of cases. Let's deal with the number of cases, for instance. Then we will have this. Let's assume that we want the employment status to be at the category axis, and then we want the gender to be at the cluster part. So now we put the gender in this defined clustered by in this box, this rectangular box. Then category axis, we have employment status in this rectangular box also. We could proceed to say okay. And the result is coming up. That's lovely. So we now obtain the result. This is the staked bar chart. So for unemployed, we have the number for male and the number for female. So you could see that from this data set, more female are unemployed than the male. Then in terms of the retirement, you could also see that more males are retired than the female. And for those employed actively in service, we could see that there are more females than the male. If you want to show the actual values, you could right-click on the graph, sorry, on the chart. Rather, this is a chart. Then go to Edit and click on Edit. And then you go to Elements at the top icon. Show data labels. And then this will clearly show us the data labels. Of course, you could see the data labels. You could see 41 males, 80 females unemployed. 385 males, 290 female unemployed. 477 males, 499 female. Oh, sorry, for the retired rather, 385 males and 290 female retired in service. Then 477 and 499, that is for the female. For the male is 477, and for the female is 499 are employed in active service. So we could see this very clearly. Of course, this is also indicating that it is weighted by frequency. So you could see the frequency at the vertical axis. Let's do it in percentage also. We can similarly do this in percentage. So we go to graph, legacy dialog, bar, cluster, define. Everything is the same as we have. So all we need to do is to go to percentage of cases. If you want to move information backward, just click on it at the rectangular box. Then click on this arrow, it will go back. If you want to bring it back, you do the same, it will come back. So nothing to worry. Could do the same for the gender also. But we are happy with this. And then we'll proceed to say, okay. And it will process the result. So you could see the result now. Now, you could see that at the vertical axis, instead of count, we have percent. So it's in percentages. Let's now work out the percentages. Right-click on the graph, on the chart. And then as you right-click, you will see this menu. Then go to Edit. From Edit, you go to Element, then Show Data Labels. And with this, you can see the percentage. So clearly here, 4.5% of male and 9.2% of female are unemployed. 42.6% of male and 33.4% of female are retired in active service, or they are retired from active service rather. Then 52.8% and 47.4%, that is 52.8% of male and 57.4% of female are employed in active service. So you could see that the staked bar chart provide a more meaningful information to the data set, the grouped data set. We could also use multiple bar chart if we are happy with that. multiple bar charts. We could go to multiple bar charts. So if you're here, you go to graphs. You could also, from that very graph, proceed accordingly. No information is lost. I just want to come back again to the main screen, but you could continue from the output screen. You will not lose any information at all. You will get exactly the same result. But it's just that it will put the result on the same screen where you need to scroll down. So now, in this case, we return back to our original screen, and then we have the legacy dialogues. We still go to the bar. From this bar, you could go down to staked. Instead of the cluster bar chart, we are going to staked now. In the first instance, we dealt with clustered bar chart, while in this second instance, we're dealing with staked bar chart. Define. And what do we want? We assume that that is the employment status, should be at the category axis, and then the gender should be at the staked. We want to stake it by gender. Same, we are working on number of cases. We could also work for percentage of cases if we want. And then we say, okay. And then you can see now for the stake, this is what we will obtain. So you will see the values for the male, values for female. But since in most cases, it could be difficult for you to really read the value correspondingly, to read what each of these bars, the numerical value it will represent from the vertical axis, then it's advisable to right-click. You go to Edit, and then at the top menu or icons, you click on Elements, Show Data Labels. And of course, you could see the data labels. For the male, for the female, everything clearly shown here. So this is how we could do analysis of group data in SPSS. And in particular, is to obtain the charts. So we have the clustered bar chart and also the staked bar chart. So this is an example of a staked bar chart, while the other one is the clustered bar chart, the one we obtained previously. We can still obtain from here, for instance, if you get this off, now we have this already. Let's keep it as it is. I only reduce the font size. I minimize it. So you could go to graph, for instance, legacy dialog, bar, and then we go again to cluster, for instance. Then we'll click on cluster, define, and then what have we got? We've done this already. Let's take it back. Take it back again. The next thing we want to do is to have the gender at the category axis, and then to have the employment status as the clusters. So if we do this, then let's assume we're dealing with number of cases instead of percentage of cases. And then we say, okay. Then you could see the result very clearly now. So we have for the male, and then also for the female, the gender. So you could see here, for male, the number that is unemployed, the number that is retired, and the number of males employed. Similarly for the female, number of female unemployed, number of female retired, and number of females employed in active service. If I want to show the labels, then we'll go to Edit, where you right-click, then you proceed to Elements, Show Data Labels. And of course, you could see the data label very clearly. So we call this a staked bar chart. Staked bar chart. So you will see the difference. For the staked, you have different bars are clustered. Sorry, we call this clustered bar chart rather. Clustered. So you could see that we cluster them 1, 2, 3 are clustered. Then 1, 2, 3 also cluster. So we cluster the bars for the male and also the bars for the female. But if it is distinct, they are not clustered. We can have the same bar, then we split it, we partition it into male and female, for instance. Also for employment, we could do the same. Let me minimize this. And then I could go to, that is from the same screen, no information is lost. You could go to graph, and then legacy dialog, bar. Then from what we've got here, still unclustered, or stick rather. We've done the cluster. This is the cluster, so we are moving on to the stick. So let's do the stick now. Define. And then for the stick, we want to similarly do this. Let's take everything back first. And I want my gender to be at the category axis. I want employment status to be at the stakes. So in this case, defined by stakes, so that we staked it by employment status. Then the category axis is the gender. Number of cases, that's fine. And then we say, okay. Then you could see the result in this case. So you can see the proportion. The male, we stake it into unemployed, retired, unemployed. Female also staked into unemployed, retired, unemployed. And if I click on the chart, we go to edit, then proceed to elements, show labels, and then you see the actual labels. So you could see them. So it's very easy. This is also a staked bar chart. So we have staked bar chart, and also we have the clustered bar chart in SPSS. But where you're dealing with a single variable, then we'll use the simple bar chart. For instance, if we want to deal with a single variable now, let's assume I get everything off here. I can continue here with no issues. But let me return to the main screen. Assuming I need for employment status, then I go to graphs, legacy dialogues, bar, simple, define. And let me assume that I need the percentage of cases. And I want for employment status as a category axis. Okay. Then clearly you could see the employment status. Unemployed is smaller than the retired, and then the highest is employed. So this is actually fine. Where you have more persons unemployed, that could have been more challenging in terms of economic implications, negative economic implication. But in this case, looking at this population, the unemployed is less as compared to the retired and the employed. So we have the least number for unemployed. Then we also have this number on the average for retired, and then the highest is employed. So there are more persons in this population that are employed in active service as compared to those that are retired and those unemployed. Those that are retired could still be getting benefit earning, could be getting their pension, gratuity, and all of that. But those unemployed, of course, it could be more challenging. They could be depending on the employed, and so in some cases, they could also depend on the retired. So we could see how easier it is to impute categorical data and a particular group data set in SPSS, and to also obtain charts. Now, what if we need a pie chart? We can still do the same. We can obtain a pie chart. Let's assume for the employment status. We go to graph, legacy dialogues, then you move down to pie. Define, from the pie to define. Then what do we want? We want to do that for employment status. Remember, both the gender and the employment status are weighted by frequency. Now we define slices by employment status. And then we tell, now if we want it in percentage, for instance, then we'll click on this percentage. If you want for number of cases, it's N. Let's assume we need percentage of cases. Okay. And then we can see the pie chart. So you could see that the dominant here is the employed, is the dominant population. Now, when I click on the chart, when you right click on the chart, then you go to the top icon, elements, show data labels. And then of course, clearly we can see the data labels. So you could see that 55 about 55% approximately to the nearest whole percentage. So 55% are employed. Then you could see that 38% are retired, while 7%, approximately to the nearest percent of the population, is unemployed. So unemployed is approximately 7%. Then the retired is approximately 38%, while the employed is approximately 55% of the total population. So that's fine. We've represented the data in a pie chart. So you could see that pie chart is also useful. And of course, pie chart, bar charts are very useful, and frequency distribution. They are useful in representation of categorical data. If you want to deal with frequency distribution, it's very easy. So that's also fine. And at this point, we will end this lecture. Thank you so much for watching the video. Bye.